Hi, guys. Thank you so much for being here. Sam Mansour with John L. Scott. Our team is myself, Daryl, Eduardo. Samantha is, of course, the brain of our team. And then Mike Basket and Ali Mansour. We're always here for you. So, class today is going to talk about the process of purchasing real estate. So, please stop me for any questions. Don't hesitate to raise your hand or start speaking. We here at Mansour team are very data driven, and I'm just looking at the last 10 years, as you can see on the screen, the last 10 years of price appreciation, and that's the only focus for this particular slide. And you'll see that the prices have gone up anywhere from 7 to 12% annually, and that's a normal market for Washington. Of course, COVID came in and pushed us up a little bit, about 15 to 20% in a couple of years. But now we're back to that natural projection. I think we're going to stay there for the time being. There are other things that may impact it. But I just want to focus on a couple of things about appreciation and the level of investment you put. So let's say you have $100,000 and you put $100,000 in the stock market while you invest $100,000 in real estate. In the stock market, if the stock market goes up 10%, then you're gonna gain $10,000. However, if you invested it in real estate, the $100,000 you're gonna put it as a down payment while purchasing probably a $500,000 home. And if that went up 10%, then you're looking at fivefold, $50,000 appreciation, not $10,000 appreciation. And the other thing about real estate investment versus stock market investment is it is a tangible product where you can actually live in it, where you can rent it, sell it, of course, but it is a tangible product and it saves you from paying rent. Since we're talking a little bit about rent, I'd like to start really by discussing rent versus purchase. Let's just talk about this real quickly. A lot of people wonder, is it cheaper to rent or is it cheaper to buy? And it's not one size fits all. Are there scenarios where it's better to rent? Absolutely. And we will discuss some of these scenarios in a minute. And are there scenarios where you should buy? Yes. Are there scenarios where you cannot buy? Now, possibly, but keep in mind, we do not focus on this being a 2-week or 3-week or 6-week. We will tailor what we need to do to your needs. So we have clients that come in and need to buy a home within 6 weeks. We're there to help them. But we also have clients that come in that might not be able to buy for 2 years, and that's okay. We will be here for you in 2 years. But in the meantime, we will discuss the steps you need to take and the process of purchasing real estate so you're better educated and you know what to do in that case. So which one is cheaper, renting or buying? Well, let's look at that from a perspective of what happens when you buy, what happens when you rent. But one thing we need to explain is equity. Anybody here understand what equity is? What is the definition of equity? So, of course, some of us understand, and I'd like to just explain it in quick terminology here, where it is how much your house is worth versus how much you owe on it. So, if your home is worth $400,000 and you owe $300,000, obviously you have $100,000 of equity. I know this is a simplified way of saying it, and it's fairly simple, but I feel like explaining it never hurts. So which one is cheaper, buying or selling? What we did is we thought, let's pick a point in time. And that point, in this case, we did a 5-year, we figure we'll go back 5 years and look at two similar homes, two homes that are priced similarly. They're similar square footage, similar style of home, similar neighborhood. One was for rent in 2020 and one was for sale in 2020. So back in 2020, one of them was for rent for $1,500 a month. The other was for sale for $480,000. And we took the payment example, now we understand that the interest rate was a little lower back then, but for the payment example here, we used 3.5% down or possibly 5% down. I think 5% down is what we used on a house that was purchased for $480,000. Principal and interest payment on that house was $2,400 at the time they purchased it back in 2020. Similarly, a home in 2020 was rented for $1,500. And what we did is we tracked those homes and we fast forwarded to today, and the home that was rented for $1,500 now is being rented for $3,000. While the home that was purchased for $480,000 and had a mortgage payment of $2,400, today's mortgage payment remains to be $2,400. One of the things that we say is you're always paying a mortgage, but sometimes you're not paying your own mortgage. Sometimes you're paying the landlord's mortgage. And in that case, you are paying now $3,000 for that same house you rented for $1,500. So what equity have you built? On the rental side, you haven't built any equity. You've put in $120,000, and you will never see it again, of course. On the purchase side, you built $220,000 of equity, while actually, on average, you paid less on a monthly payment than the person that rented the property. It is that simple. And actually, when we talk about you built $220,000 in equity, we're being conservative. Because remember, each month you're paying your mortgage, it's actually bringing down what you owe on the home. We didn't take that into account. We just wanted to keep it as simple math. Okay, well, then maybe we should think about buying. Well, I can't buy. I don't have 20% down. Can we buy with less than 20% down? It is a myth that we cannot buy until we have 20% down, because there are several products that allows you to purchase a home with as little as 0% down. Or 3.5, or 10, or 15, or 12, or 20%. There's a reason the myth of 20% exists, and that is for something called PMI, private mortgage insurance. We'll talk about that in a minute. But what programs allows you to buy 0 down? Meaning no down payment whatsoever. You're purchasing the home with 0 down payment. There are 2 major programs that allow you to do that. They are VA and USDA loans. These 2 allow you to purchase with 0% down. Of course, we do want you to consult with a mortgage officer. We have several people we can refer you to, but you have to consult with a mortgage officer to get a little bit more specific about it. FHA, or Federal Housing Administration, offers a 3.5% loan, where 3.5% down payment. So you can do the math, of course, $1 million, that's $35,000. And these are great options. And sometimes the FHA loan interest rate are actually lower than the interest rate you get at 20%. And of course, there are conventional loan as low as 3%, and you can buy with 10% or 15%. But the reason the 20% idea comes into play is because once you have 20% down, the lending institution, whatever bank you're borrowing the money from, will not charge you mortgage insurance to protect them in case you default on the mortgage. So that's what private mortgage insurance is. Not your home insurance. It's not insurance to protect you. It's not insurance to protect your family or your belonging. It's insurance to protect the bank. That's why if you have 20% or able to get 20%, it's great. I think that's the best way to purchase. But we do not want the perfect to stand in the way of the good. Because if we go back a little bit and we go into an example where people put 5% or less down, even with the private mortgage insurance, they still have $220,000 of equity. There's a reason we took this example versus the 20% example. Had we put the 20% example, they might have about $280,000 or $290,000 of equity. That's perfect. But $220,000 in equity is a lot better than negative $120,000 in equity. Any questions about that? Okay, so now that we know how much you need to bring in, or what is required, so to speak, to bring in. Of course, it's not just the down payment. The down payment is just one lever. There are several other levers like your credit, your income, your debt, and all that you can discuss with a mortgage officer that will probably give you a better idea of what works specifically for you and your family. Now, what are the steps of buying a home? Well, a lot of steps of buying a home. We tried to simplify it. We took it into 6-step category, and we'll talk about this in a little bit more details because I feel that that's important for anybody that is looking to purchase a home. Step 1, of course, you look for a home. So in the beginning, we start looking for a house, and we start sending you a property, and you let us know which one you like, which one you don't like, and we discuss with you what are the positive and negative. Then you make an offer. Once you find a home, you go make an offer. Step 3, if the offer is accepted, then we are at mutual acceptance. Then the mortgage process begin. Escrow, then we go into escrow. Escrow has to do what they need to do to close the transaction. And then we close, and we will be there for you post-closing. But I want to kind of zoom in on each one of those steps for a minute just to discuss specifically what needs to be done. So let's talk about searching for a home. Before you even look for a home, what you need to do is get an appointment with a mortgage broker and figure out, what do you qualify for? Do you qualify for a $500,000 home, for a $2 million home? And just because you qualify for it doesn't mean you have to go buy it. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. But I want to discuss the difference, because there's a lot of people say, oh, I have my pre-qualification letter, my pre-approval letter, my underwritten approval. What is the difference? Pre-qualification, that means I called the mortgage officer and I said, hey, I make X amount of dollars and I have no debt. The mortgage officer can say, okay, based on what you're telling me, here's a pre-qualification. Doesn't hold much weight. Pre-approval is when you do everything we just said about, but also provide your W-2, your 1099, and they pull credit, then they're able to give you a pre-approval. Remember, the mortgage person is giving you pre-approval. Once you find a home, then he or she have to send that to the underwriter to approve it, which lead us to the next level of approval, which is the underwritten approved buyer. If you do that, then you shine. You are a top tier buyer, where if I was competing for a property and the difference is between you and somebody that has a pre-qualification or pre-approval that is competing, 99.9% of the time you're going to rise above that other buyer. So it makes you a much stronger buyer, and we strongly recommend it. Once we know how much you can afford, and not only how much you can afford, what your payment is going to be, and you're comfortable with that payment, then we start looking for home. We figure out the criteria, the number of bedrooms, number of bathrooms, and the square footage, and we start sending you these homes, and then you start viewing these homes online. Once you like something, so the days of people searching for, going and visiting 200 homes are gone. People will look at 400 homes online, decide which ones they want to see, and then we will go and view them in person, of course. But this is where we start coming in and really advising you. And there are thousands of criteria that we look for, or thousands of little flags, red flags, green flags, sometimes I call them, where it's something good. And we will discuss those as we go into the home. So for example, if we walk into a home, Kim, tell me, what year was your home built? Go ahead. We have two Kims here. 59. So a 1959 home, we want to make sure that the electrical has been updated, the plumbing has been upgraded. How many earthquakes has it survived, and do we have a foundation issue? I know your house was built in 94, so if a home is built in 94. What kind of siding does it have? Does it have LP siding, Louisiana Pacific siding, where it is a defective type of siding? And we want to look for those red flags. And if they do exist, that doesn't mean you shouldn't buy the home. You just should know about it. And of course, we will do the home inspection to make sure the home is in good working order. And we will review all available documents, whether State of Washington requires each seller to complete a seller disclosure statement, Form 17. We will review that, and if there are any red flags, we will address them, and then we will share that with the inspector to make sure that the inspector is looking at what the seller disclosed, so he or she can have a closer eye at that specific issue. Any questions on step one, on the home search? All right, now we found a home. There's the home. We love it. We want to buy it. And we want to make an offer. So we sit down, we write the offer. But as we are writing the offer, we explain the timeline and contingencies. What is a contingency? So I am a buyer, and I want to buy your house, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. But my purchase is subject to the following, for example. Contingent on me conducting an inspection and having that inspection satisfactory to me. Washington State says that is a subjective 100%, meaning I can go, look at the house, say, I don't like it anymore, and walk away. So that's part of the leverage buyers have. Other contingency is financing. Even though I have an approval letter from the bank, and I went and got it from ABC Bank, and all of a sudden ABC Bank is having a hard time and they close door. Well, you still have that financing contingency to protect you. Hey, after good faith effort, I was unable to obtain financing. Therefore, I don't purchase the home. Therefore, I do not lose any of my earnest money. Then offer timeline and review dates. We discuss each one of those. And we do what's called the CMA, market analysis, comparative market analysis, to determine, is that home priced well? And if it isn't, then should we try to negotiate it down? Yes, we have a question.
Yeah, you mentioned something called earnest money. Can you explain that?
Absolutely. Great question. What is earnest money? Why should when I purchase a home, I make an offer to buy your home, and I want to put something in there that is tangible, that demonstrates my seriousness, my good faith gesture. It's a good faith gesture that I do intend to purchase your home. Let's say we didn't have earnest money and you put your house on the market, then 20 people could come and give you an offer, and their intention is just to take the house off the market without any cost. So earnest money acts as a good faith gesture to demonstrate the strength and seriousness of the buyer to the seller. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely.
Okay, so once we determine a purchase price, we put an offer based on that determination. And then if the seller has not done a pre-inspection and made it available to us, then the offer will have an inspection contingency timeline, and we will discuss that time at the time of making an offer. And our offer is not good forever. When we make an offer, we try to put a little bit of a limitation on our offer. Hey, this offer expires tonight or expires tomorrow. That way, the seller does not sit on our offer for a week and then decides they wanna accept it. So we will make sure to put an expiration date on the offer. Yes, we have another question. So the question is, does the seller always have to allow the buyer to do an inspection? That's a good question. No, the seller is not forced to do anything. However, when the seller lists the property, we'll usually provide an inspection, a pre-inspection if they have it ready. But when we make an offer, the offer will state, we are asking you, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, to do an inspection. And if they sign that contract, that permits us to do an inspection. Any other questions? Step two, making an offer. Step three, once the offer is accepted, so we made the offer, the seller decided we're going to accept the offer. That's wonderful. Now the timeline kicks in. We have usually 2 or 3 business days, depending on the contract, to deposit the earnest money. Where does the earnest money go? It goes to escrow. So we will talk about escrow in a minute. Then inspection as applicable, home inspection, septic inspection, well inspection. If there are specific things that we need to do an inspection to, these are the specific professionals that we will call and conduct an inspection. So, but let's say a home inspector goes into the house and says, you know, there is an issue here that is beyond my area of expertise. For example, the home inspection goes into the attic and they see a whole bunch of discoloration on the eaves of the attic. Well, that could be mold. The home inspector could say, because I saw something that is beyond my scope of knowledge, now I am recommending that you hire somebody. In that case, and only in that case, we get additional time to go hire another professional to come and make sure that that problem either doesn't exist or we understand more about that specific problem. Septic inspection, if there's a septic system, we'll do a septic inspection. Well, if there's a well, we'll do a well inspection or a sample. And then we have to meet all these contingency timeline. We have an entire staff. Their job is just to make sure that we never, ever miss a deadline. So for example, let's say the inspection has a 5-day inspection. On the 5th day, if we do not conduct that inspection and tell the seller what we want, we have automatically waived that inspection. It's important that you understand that. It's also important you understand that timeline in real estate is different or is defined as the state defines it in the revised code of Washington. Any timeline that is 5 days or less are calculated as business days. Any timeline that is 6 days or more are calculated as calendar days. And we'll talk about this more separately if anybody has any specific questions. Any questions on step 3? All right, so once our offer is accepted, several things happen simultaneously. One of them is the mortgage process. The mortgage person or the mortgage officer is going to require a bunch of documents, and it's going to get a little frustrating sometimes because it's going to feel like we've provided these documents over and over. Keep in mind, it is a process from a banking institution. The mortgage officer do not control the guidelines. So provide them with whatever they need. Then it goes into the underwriter review. Unless you've already had it underwritten review like we discussed before, then you're done. Then it goes into an appraisal. Appraisal is a very important part of our transaction here. The appraiser will go there for the benefits of the bank and you, so to speak, but more the bank. Because let's say the bank is lending you 80% of the value of the property. The bank wants to make sure that that home is worth that value, the 100%, not the 80%. So they act as kind of a safety net. If we all made a mistake and the appraiser went there and says, hey, this home is not worth $700, it's only worth $600,000, then we have things to address in that case. And we'll talk about that once the appraisal, once we have an appraisal, actually, we'll talk further about it and explain it. And the appraisal report will go back to the lender to make sure that the lender is satisfied with it. Also, the other job of the appraiser is to make sure that the home is habitable. So if the appraiser walks in and there's a hole in the ceiling, they're going to call that as a work order, that has to be repaired prior to lending. So underwritten approval, we spoke about that. Closing disclosure, the bank will send you a closing disclosure a few days prior to closing to make sure that you understand everything and you have enough time to review it. Loan documents to escrow. Once the bank approves everything and go through their process, about 2 or 3 days prior to closing, they will send loan documents to escrow to let them know how much they're paying, so escrow can create a balance. They balance the fund and create what's called a settlement statement that tells you exactly how much money you have to bring in and where that money goes, so you're aware of all these items. Any questions on the mortgage process?
On appraiser,
Mhm.
how do they know that that home is worth $700,000? Like, how do they determine that?
Great question. So if we go back to the one of the steps where we do an actual market analysis on the home, when we are making an offer and determining the purchase price, what we do is competitive market analysis. We take the home and we do about a mile radius. In some cases, we have to go wider or smaller depending on the density, and we try to stay within 20% of the square footage of the property. And the reason we use that methodology, because it's the exact same methodology that the appraiser used. So it's very seldom that we're surprised because we've already done the work. And if the appraiser goes there and says, hey, this home is not worth this much, then we usually have that supporting documentation to provide to the appraiser to to show them that, yes, it is worth what we are offering. That answer your question?
Thanks, yeah.
Of course. So remember, we talked about things happening simultaneously, the mortgage process and the escrow process, because once we have mutual acceptance, we send the documents to both the lender and the escrow company. What is escrow? So let's talk a little bit about escrow before we talk about the specific things that escrow do. Escrow job is a disinterested third party. They don't represent the buyer. They don't represent the seller. Their job is to collect a clear, marketable title from the seller and the funds from the buyer and the buyer's mortgage company. And their job is to make sure all the documents exist. And before they switch hand, they have to send a document to the county to be recorded. And that in Washington State is the definition of closing. It's not the same definition in other states, but it is here. So opening package, as soon as escrow receives the contract, they will send an opening package to the buyer and to the seller, asking the buyers what do they want, how do they wire the money to them, the earnest money, asking the buyer about their name, their phone number, all their information, so they can do what they need to do. They also work with title companies, and title companies will pull the title of that property to ensure that the title does not have any red flags or any liens against it, because part of our instruction to escrow is do not close the transaction unless we have a clean, marketable title. So that is the title company's job, to review the title. But not only will they review the title, they will issue a title insurance for the benefit of the buyer. The seller will pay for the title insurance, but it's to the benefit of the buyer. So let's say 3 years later, there's some kind of a title lien, some kind of a lien that comes up that happened prior to the buyer purchasing it. Well, that title insurance will protect the buyer. Loan documents, once escrow receive loan documents, they'll work the loan document, they'll create a settlement statement that tells the buyer and the seller exactly how much money they're bringing, where that money is being applied. Closing costs, both buyer and seller will have some closing costs. The buyer's closing cost is the cost of obtaining financing and half of escrow, while the seller's closing cost is paying the taxes, paying for the title insurance, half of escrow. There are also some costs for real estate that can be on the buyer's ledger or on the seller's ledger or on both. You had a question. Of course. Good question. So before I dive into title, I want to have a disclaimer that anytime you work with us, we have title officers, people that are professional, that all they do is title, that are available to you to discuss all the information. But what is a clean title? A clean title, that means a title that does not have any encumbrance or any liens against them. So for example, let's say I own a home and I hired a roofer to replace my roof. And the roofer came and replaced my roof, and I decided not to pay him or her. And all of a sudden, 3 months later, the roofer decides, I am going to take a lien against the property. It's called mechanical lien. Because they did not pay me $20,000 that they owe me, now there's a lien against the property. So the escrow looks at this and title company looks at this and says, there's a lien against the property of $20,000. Remember, the property is its own entity. It is owned by the owner, but its own entity. So if the owner sells it to a buyer, that $20,000 lien could transfer to the buyer as well. However, because of the instruction we provided to escrow and the title company, we say we want a clean title. Therefore, prior to transferring the title to the property from a seller to a buyer, escrow is instructed to pay all liens. And if liens are not paid, we do not want to buy the property. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Well, the instruction is we do not want to purchase a home that has any liens on it. So yes, for us to purchase the home, that the property has to be clean, has to have a clean title, clean and clear title. That answer your question? Well, so that is kind of the escrow process. Signing appointment, they'll schedule a signing and come and have you sign the either they'll come to you or you'll go to them. And once you sign all documents, the documents will go back to the lender, then will go to the county to be recorded. Once they are recorded, we have closing, and then we can give you the keys. And that is kind of, what we live for. We love that moment when we hand that key is why we're here. Of course, we all do this for living, but we love what we do, and we want to be able to hand you that key, and we feel extremely special when we do that. So hopefully that day will come soon. Then, now we gave you the keys, and you move in there, and what do I do now? What do I have to do? Well, we're here. We're not going to leave you alone. You're stuck with us for life, and our team exists of, we have 6 people that are dedicated to helping you. So whether you need a contractor, a mover, a lender, escrow company, cleaners, title company, insurance agent, we're here to help you. We never tell you what to do, but we'll provide all these resources to you, and definitely please keep in touch with us. But even if you didn't, we will. So if we annoy you, let us know and we'll stop, but we will at least keep in touch with you on a quarterly basis. Any questions about our network? Oh, thank you. I can't take credit for it. One of my team members, Ali, did that. What is the role of a realtor? So that is a good question, and that's a good segue to our next slide here. My role is to help you determine your goals, find you the best home possible, but sometimes tell you maybe you shouldn't buy a home. We've had incidents where we have somebody come in here and they either are going through some family issues, or they might be losing a job, or they might be moving. Well, maybe they shouldn't buy a home. Maybe it's not time to buy a home. So we will tell you if we think you shouldn't buy a home. But we will also do everything we can to try to find the right environment to suit your lifestyle, your personal needs, your family needs. So that's our role. We do have a fiduciary duty. My duty is to watch out for your best interest, not mine. If you tell me something that is private to you, my duty is to keep that between us. I cannot go and just tell everybody, hey, Mike needs this and Mike needs that, and that is our fiduciary duty to you. And when you do trust us, we don't take that lightly. We appreciate your trust, and we will do everything we can to not just meet your expectation, but truly exceed your expectation. And we will negotiate on your behalf and to the best of your interest, not to the best of our interest. So that is our role. And yeah, always ask us questions. We're always happy to share what we know. But if we don't know something, we will go find it out. With that said, a little bit about us. Myself have been in the business for 22 years. This actually, July is my 22nd anniversary at John L. Scott. And as a realtor, I've started here and been here the whole time. Same office, same managing broker, same everything. Samantha has been doing this forever, so has Daryl, we've been together for many, many years. Eduardo's been with us for 5 years. Mike and Ali have been with us for a couple of years. And we pride ourselves on having somebody available to you 7 days a week. So if I'm not available, one of these guys will be available. We have the best, we take as best notes as we can. So everybody is familiar with every file. So please do not hesitate to reach out. And if you have any questions, come after the meeting and we can discuss them. Thank you very much.